Hi there, I'm Scott and this is Matt and we're from HireWindow.
Hi.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about CVs. Matt, you're obviously a recruitment expert, and what would be your tip for someone? One of the biggest questions I think a lot of people have is how they should format their CV.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start when talking about CVs, because you have a very short amount of time, essentially, to make an impact on someone with a document, whether it's a CV, whether it's something else. So there's various statistics out there about how long a recruiter or a hiring manager will actually look at a CV before they make a decision. Yeah. And for better or for worse, it's a very short amount of time. I think that with that question, and I'll probably keep coming back to this because it's true of many questions about CVs, about LinkedIn profiles, about covering letters. There's no one right answer. So I think you have to take into account your audience. I think you have to take into account, and that might be, could be industry, taking into account the industry you're in or the role that you're going forward for, or whatever else it is. I mean, if you were applying for a job in finance at an engineering firm where things are a bit more traditional and it's quite a professional role, you would imagine that something relatively standard, black and white Word document, just well thought out, subtitles, different sections, etc., would work really well. But if you are going for a role in marketing at a startup and you put a black and white CV in front of someone, it might work because you might have the right experience. If you've got a good recruiter looking at it, they'll realise that actually what they're looking for is the evidence on the CV. But you might give yourself a better chance if you make something a bit more creative, colourful, formatted, make something on Canva or a graphic design tool rather than on Microsoft Word. So from a formatting perspective, just think about what it is you're trying to actually get across, and there's no one right answer for that question.
There's no one right answer in terms of the formatting. What about the kind of do's and don'ts? What should a CV include? What should you leave out?
I think that the most important thing to remember about a CV is that you're creating a sales document. You are, whether you like it or not, you are trying to sell yourself as a potential hire. Okay. What that means is you want to treat writing a CV as if you are a copywriter in marketing or in sales, and that means you kind of need to cut out all the nonsense and the superfluous words and possibly even things like jargon, and actually just get down to what it is that people really care about. So if you're thinking about stuff not to include in the CV, you can go ahead and take out the fact that you can use Microsoft Excel and Word, because who can't? I mean, you can get rid of the fact that you're good at teamwork because everyone's expected to. You can get rid of the fact that you're a hard worker because that's what people are paying you to do, is to work hard. So I would leave out stuff that I think is kind of, as I say, superfluous, or just everyone is going to put on there, and just focus in on being really concise about exactly how it is that you add value. And that kind of swings back around to what to actually include in the end, is kind of really focus on how it is that you add value. The most common mistake that people will make on a kind of a CV is to talk about what they did, or kind of how they did things, and sort of they end up saying stuff like, managed a team of 10 IT professionals or something like that, rather than saying recruited and developed and drove performance and increased the performance of the team. And you really want to focus in on results and measurable metrics. Almost do kind of a bit of an audit of yourself and think, well, what would I be saying if I was in a performance review or something like that to really prove my value to an organisation? Think of it like that.
Perhaps what some people struggle with is that you're having to sell yourself, aren't you? And it's, I've helped some family members with their CV before, and it's a lot easier for me to write about them than they find writing about themselves or selling themselves, and that's something that maybe people have to get over.
And some of that's cultural, because in the UK we're quite reserved like that, I think. Some of it, you just have to, and it's not that you should be overly positive, overly exaggerating yourself and trying to sell yourself in that way. You don't have to kind of go overboard on it, but you absolutely need to highlight what it is you're really good at, and kind of why someone should want to interview you, why someone should want to hire you. Otherwise, what's the point of having a CV?
And one of the cardinal sins, I suppose, of sending a CV is getting one CV and sending it to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, you're quite passionate about tailoring a CV to the opportunity, to the company, to the job.
Yeah, I think the way that if I was searching for a job currently, the way that I would approach that would be to have kind of a skeleton CV that I kept on my computer, and that would be kind of 75 to 80% of the content would be relatively fixed, and it would give me some structure to work around, and then per each job that I'm applying to, per each organisation, per each industry, I would then add that extra 20 to 25% of the content that is specific to that role. The reality of it is that, you know, yes, a finance manager role in one organisation versus another, maybe they're both in the same industry, they feel really similar, but you need to be talking about how you hit exactly what it is that person is recruiting for, that organisation is recruiting for. You know, recruitment at that kind of CV stage is a bit of a tick box exercise. You know, it's kind of is there evidence of this, and this? Because that's going to be in the job advert, because it's in the job description, because that's what's going to drive success in the role. Yeah. So just kind of reverse engineer that and make sure you're tailoring to the organisation. It doesn't have to be a long process. You know, I'm not talking about writing a different CV for every role. It should probably take you about 20 minutes. And the chances are, if it's taking you longer than that, then you're not right for the role, because it's taking you too long to think about why you should be considered for the job, if that makes sense. And that's not good for you, and that's not good for the organisation at the end of the day. So if it's taking you more than 20 or 30 minutes to kind of edit your CV for every job, I wouldn't actually bother applying.
And there's lots of little snippets of information online about little sort of hacks that you can do, even down to when you're tailoring the CV, naming it, you know, including the company name and the job in the file name, as opposed to just your name, CV. As a hiring manager, do those things make a difference, do you think, or is it kind of by the by?
Fair. I mean, some of those really small ones, the kind of making sure that it's named as, you know, Matt Clark CV for HireWindow application, very little difference. That kind of thing. I mean, you know, I think it's easy to get caught up in those sort of trying to almost hack the process a bit. I don't know, but really what you need to be focusing on is, does this document clearly display exactly how I will add massive value to this organisation as best as a physical document can, because it can only do so much, right? And that should be what you're focusing all of your energy on, and, you know, making sure it's a true representation of yourself as a professional.
And how does this is going slightly off, but how does a recruiter look at a CV? If you've got a pile of CVs in front of you, some jobs you might have 50, 60 CVs to go through. How does a recruiter go through that, and I suppose how can then someone make sure that they stand out?
It really depends if they're a good recruiter or a bad recruiter. You know, some, as I mentioned at the beginning, some recruiters will look at a CV and they will judge it in half a second. Some recruiters will take the time to really read the detail within the CV and understand if there is an interesting fit there. A good recruiter will probably go somewhere in between. They won't waste time on something that's clearly wrong, but they will, as I've said, it's kind of a tick box exercise. Well, the CV is kind of there to present evidence that you are worth interviewing for a role. So a good recruiter will look at it and say, well, there's evidence of X, Y, Z, and that's what I was looking for. Yeah. Here are my questions, here's what I want to probe during an interview process, here's where we might be lacking, etc., etc. So it really depends if it's a good recruiter or a bad recruiter, but to kind of, I guess, stand yourself in the best, give yourself the best possible chance of progressing in the recruitment process. You know, you need to be aware that there will be those poor recruiters that you might come up against that are going to prejudge your CV. So to give them what they need really, really quickly, and that can be as simple as putting the most interesting stuff at the top of the page. And so if you've got you can have your name and the sort of the title, but if you've got underneath that maybe a short personal statement type paragraph, that needs to be the most impactful part of your CV. Plain and simple. It's going to be the first thing that people look at.
So it's your elevator pitch.
Basically, yeah. You know, so if that sucks and it's just a load of sort of nonsense and overused terms and maybe a list of skills that, you know, everyone has, like, as I said at the beginning, hard work and I can use Microsoft Excel, there's a good chance that the recruiter doesn't get past that onto your actual job experience. So just kind of, as I say, reverse engineer the process. And, you know, most people have been involved in recruitment processes in some guise or another. Even if you're really junior, your manager might have said, "What do you think of this CV?" So just put yourself in the shoes of someone that's looking at a CV for the first time.
And what is the future of the CV? A CV or resume is an old-fashioned thing, so to speak. It's can be very black and white, as you said. Are they becoming slightly outdated? Should students be looking at more creative ways, perhaps recording an interview, a video, to send in?
I think, it staggers me that CVs still exist at all. It doesn't really make any sense. They are imperfect tools, but they are still asked for in lots and lots, the vast majority of job applications. So it is worth having a well put together CV. I think the future of the CV is ultimately very different. I think it is enabled by technology, so that it's not an actual document that you're emailing to people. Whether that looks like a LinkedIn profile, whether it looks like something similar, I don't entirely know, but I do think that we will look back in 5 to 10 years' time, and we'll look back at sending a PDF document to people in black and white, and I just think it was nuts, basically. So I don't know exactly what the future of CV looks like. I'm kind of minded to think that LinkedIn would have cracked it by now if they were going to, and it doesn't seem to have worked. They seem to have obviously fantastic business, and I love LinkedIn. They don't seem to have done that whole completely replace CV thing. So I think for now the best advice I could give to a student is to kind of hedge your bets. So have a really good CV, because you're going to have to use it. You're not in a position to define the recruitment industry. But have a really good LinkedIn profile. I would say that particularly if I was in kind of wanted to go into tech or something creative or marketing or media or anything like that, I would absolutely have a personal website. Not just a personal blog, but a personal website that kind of gave an introduction to myself. Incredibly cheap to do. I'd do that on Wix or Card or Squarespace or something similar like that. And then I think that if I was approaching companies cold, and I wasn't applying to a job advert, but I was trying to do the whole kind of, look, you have this problem, I can solve it for you, here's my skill set, then I would probably get more creative with that rather than just sending a CV. Yeah. That's when I might think about recording myself or sending a portfolio of work or whatever else it is. It's a really interesting question, and it's impossible to predict the future of the future of what CVs look like. I don't think, as I said, I don't think it will be PDF and Word documents that we send to people, hopefully. But we are notoriously bad at predicting the future as human beings. Some stuff's really sticky. 30 years ago we thought we would have hoverboards. Instead we've got glowing rectangles in our pockets with access to all the information in the world. So no one really saw that coming. So we're pretty bad at predicting these things, and I don't really know. But for now, you just have to play the game play the game by the rules that currently exist, I suppose.
And if you had one bit of final advice for students watching, getting ready to apply for their grad jobs, what would it be?
I think the one thing from a student perspective is how short of time you're going to be, because you're trying to study, maybe prepare for exams, have the sort of social life that comes with being at university, and at the same time figure out what it is you want to do and how to get into that industry. So anything that saves you time is a massive plus. So if you're a STEM student, you can sign up to HireWindow, and your HireWindow profile will become a bit like your CV but better. You absolutely should be on LinkedIn as well, because you might get noticed by recruiters and find jobs you otherwise wouldn't have. And then the final tip when it comes to just straight up CVs is kind of follow that advice I gave earlier, where you have a skeleton CV that is 75 to 80% complete, and then you add that 20 to 25% detail per each job, per each organisation to make it tailored. And that's going to save you a huge amount of time and effort in the long run, and improve your applications as well.
Perfect. Well, I hope you found those CVs useful. Like Matt said, if you're a STEM student looking for your perfect fit job, sign up to HireWindow.com.